Hi artists, today we are going to continue deep sea diving and our creature is the manta ray. So the materials you'll need: a paper, drawing pencil, an eraser, various markers for whatever color you want to do the ocean, and a pen. I'm just going to use a Sharpie here. So the first thing is I want to show you how you can change the size and the composition. So if you have your paper here, it's in portrait, so it's long. I want you to fold it in half. Just use your fingers, press down, a lot of pressure. If you want to cut it, you can, but this just changes our orientation. So we go from a normal kind of size paper to a more skinny, long format. This is also the format that they would use for Japanese and Chinese landscape painting. Alright, so first we're going to start out with our pencil, and we're just going to go into drawing the shape of the manta ray. So they have almost like a diamond shape and really beautiful long, they almost look like wings. So I'm going to do one that's farther away in the distance. So we're going to start out with a slightly diagonal straight line. I want you to go to the middle of that straight line and hop down. And then from that point you're going to do a curved line curving up towards the left, and a curved line up towards the right. And then from the left side of that line, you're going to do a curve, curving down and over to the point. And then the same thing on the right side, you're going to curve and go over to the right. So I'm going to do 4 manta rays lined up in a row, and this is based off of an image that I found online, and as we learned, these creatures like to live in really warm waters, so I chose some Tahitian music for background for us to feel like we're in the islands. And you know, as I've talked about before, as artists we have the power to almost transport ourselves to a totally different world. So just using your imagination. I love to look at photographs or flip through magazines, read books, because all of those really feed my soul in thinking about how, you know, artists can transport themselves and imagine yourself in a totally different place. So you know, these manta rays are all moving at different kind of ways, and so each one is going to have a slightly different kind of shape to it. But as we go down, we're going to make them bigger, because the farther away, the smaller it is in scale for a little bit of proportion, and then the closer we are to it, the larger it's going to appear. So after you do this one, we'll see a little bit of the tail, so really light line coming down there. You can add one here too, just a really light one. And then we're going to hop down. Start with a curved line. Go to the middle of that curved line, hop down. And as you can tell, it's getting longer. And then you're going to go to the top first, curve slightly down on the left and the right, and then you're going to do a long diagonal straight line to the left, same on the right, and then it's going to curve around, connect to the bottom dot here. Alright, and then for the last manta ray, you're going to go down to the bottom, And this one, you're going to leave some space. You're going to do a curved line. And this one, we're going to see a little bit more detail. So you're going to do a curve going up and down on the left and on the right. Curving down slightly towards the bottom left side of your paper. Same thing on the right. And then this is going to curve all the way until it touches the edge of the paper. Same thing on the right side. Okay. Now, since we had a little bit more detail here, now we're going to go back to the middle of that curved line. You're going to hop down, make a little mark, and then you're going to do a curve, curving over from the right side to touch, and the left side. And then you can do a little line going off the side of your paper. Okay, so that's really it for the shape of our manta rays lined up. And so you can put your pencil to the side. If you needed to move anything around, then you could use your eraser, move the lines around, but this is a pretty fluid kind of line work for our manta rays. So the next thing we're going to do is outline them. So if you joined us for the giant squid, we're going to use that same kind of technique. So I'm just going to allow us to listen to the music. I like to rotate my paper, I get a better handle on it. And you're just going to outline each of your manta rays. All right, so most of you should have finished outlining your manta rays. And the next step we're going to do is we're just going to fill them in. So there's a few different styles you can do. So you could just fill the whole entire manta ray in. So for the one farthest from us, I'm going to use the hatching technique that we learned with the squid. So you're going to do these lines filling the space. I'm just doing these diagonal straight lines covering the whole entire body of the manta ray. So the closer they are together, the darker you will get the value. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna make my way down, and each one I'm gonna do a slightly different kind of style. So the next one you could try doing the cross hatching. So that you're gonna start with diagonal straight lines going in one direction. So I'm going from the top right to the bottom left. And then I'm going to switch it, so I'm going to go from the top left to the bottom right. So we're creating these little cross marks. They look like X's or a grid shape. So just with simple lines, you can create really different types of textures, which again you may have learned with our last lesson with the giant squid. Now, if you were going quickly like I was, and maybe you got a few of the little marks outside of the shape, the nice thing is, since we're using pen, you can just clean up those areas. So I'm just going to go a little bit outside of the shape of my manta ray. You are going to get a bolder line, but you can use that technique to clean up any areas that you may have gone outside of the lines if you want to make it more bold, more defined. So I'm just showing you different techniques. If you want to stick with one for all of them, you're welcome to, or you can try each one with me. The next one would be curved lines. So I see a little bit of, let's see, a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to start out by doing 2 curved lines from the left and the right side. Also, some manta rays have different colorings. So a lot of them tend to be a white belly or like a light gray belly with black or dark gray from the top. So this is an aerial view. So if I was diving above these manta rays, this would be the view I would have looking down on them. They're very similar to sharks in the coloring. So, you know, sharks have that kind of lighter belly underneath. So what we're going to do for this one, I'm just going to add different curved lines. You can create the same spacing in between them, or if you wanted to, you know, spread it out a little bit, you could also do that. So I'm just kind of lining up these curved lines from either side, and they're going to meet kind of down the middle of the body. So the Polynesians, so Hawaiians, some of you have gone to Hawaii or different islands in Tahiti, Samoa, Fiji. They really regarded different animals and different masses of land like volcanoes and mountains and waterfalls to have their own kind of spirit to them. So they believed that they carried this kind of manta rays specifically were very wise, and they were almost spiritual guardians, so they were protectors of the oceans, which makes sense because we learned that manta rays have the biggest brains of all kind of fish, and in Hawaii they even do chants and special rituals. So they would do celebrations and create different things to honor these different spirit guides and guardians. And so they really, as an island, they're surrounded by the ocean. And so there was a hierarchy given to the animals of the sea and the coral and the fish. And they really treated it with a lot of respect. So it's kind of cool to learn the history of all of these different types of cultures. And in different cultures they have different ways to honor their traditions, and one tradition in Polynesian cultures was dance and song. And so they would create movements that would mimic the manta ray. This is if you put your hands one on top of the other and you have your thumbs out and you make it move. This is how they Hawaiians would show someone that they're talking about a turtle. Or if you have your palm of your hand face up, you put your thumb up against your fingers. This is a flower bud, and then when it pops open, it blossoms. So there's different ways that not only in visual art when you're creating something, but also in like movement, you can create different stories and use your body and even your voice to be a storyteller. So for the last one, I'm going to add a little bit of that kind of Polynesian inspiration. So I'm actually looking at a picture of a manta ray tattoo, and to get inspiration from the design. Let me show you. So here's a few different examples. I'll show you on my phone. So if you did the tribal shark with us, you got to see these beautiful kinds of designs. So use of curved lines, angle lines, little designs that look like the ocean. So that one I'm going to add a lot of detail in, and you can follow along or you can come up with your own. So the first thing I'm going to do is a slightly curved line curving across the top here. And then I'm going to do 2 straight lines coming down to meet the bottom. So it's almost like the letter T. Then we can go ahead and do a curved line curving up on the left and right. And then I'm just going to do some simple triangle shapes. So you're going to do triangle on either side. So this is symmetrical, meaning it's the same on both sides, just like a butterfly's wings. And then I also like I'm just taking a mix of all these different ones. I'm going to do little wave shapes. So curve line, and then it curves back into itself like the barrel, and then comes back out. So you can do a few different wave formations. Okay. And then the last thing I want to do is the stippling technique. So I have these different prints, and so I'm going to use the dots. So tiny dots. You want to hold your pen. You can see it's pointing towards the ceiling, and you're just doing a bunch of dots all over. So this is called stippling, and it's also known as pointillism. So this is another technique we learned last time. You're just sprinkling this all over your manta ray to create these really beautiful textures. So we can do, we can bump up the contrast. So if you wanted to color in any of these shapes, you could. If you wanted to add more designs into the other manta rays, now that you know how to use, these different mark making techniques. So just to remind you, this is called hatching. This can go at a diagonal, it can go horizontal, it can go vertical, whichever direction you'd like. Cross hatching is when you take two diagonal lines and you cross them. Those can also be, let me show a little side sheet. So this is hatching. That can be this direction, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, either way. Cross hatching. You can do vertical and then horizontal, or you can do diagonal. Okay, so they're like either a grid or cross formation. That's what this one uses. These are curved, or you can call them wavy lines. Now you don't have to write any of these down. I'm just showing you kind of a zoomed in version so that you can see them. So, curves can go any way. They can be slightly curved, or, really curved into a spiral shape, or it can be wavy. So they can be big waves, like the rolling ocean. They can be really tiny, like ripples, or even like curly locks. So those are a few different examples. And then the last one, this is just a mixture. So we have a mixture of straight lines. So I used straight lines down the middle of the body. Again, vertical. Those are tall, horizontal, long, diagonal. I also used curved lines for the waves, and stippling. So this is how you spell stippling, or also known as pointillism. That's a type of art technique. So little tiny dots. And for this one, for stippling, this you can only really get one type of shape with the fine point. It's a very thin point, but if you use a marker, see the difference in the tip, it's more thick, so when you use that, you are going to get bigger dots. So that's how you can make a variety of that. And these can be random, like you can just keep hitting your paper, or they can be in a formation, like maybe I wanted to do them in a curved line. This is reminiscent of Aboriginal, so Australian art. So yeah, a few different examples of how you can incorporate that into your piece. And since we were focusing on positive and negative space, so right now our positive space is the areas that we filled in. So those are the manta rays, each of them, and the area inside is filled in. The negative space is the white around it. So for us, it's white right now. But if you wanted to add color, you could. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to add some more of these different mark making techniques into your manta rays, however you'd like to adorn them. And then we will go into the markers so that we can add some of those really beautiful colors that you would see in the like warmer tropical waters. Okay, so hopefully you had enough time to finish filling in your manta rays. If not, you can always go back to it, but I'm going to move on to the background. So move this out of the way. So I have various colors of the ocean. So you know, in Hawaii, in Tahiti, in the Bahamas, in Fiji, all of these islands that are really close to the equator. That's the line that goes down the middle of our Earth. It's very warm there. So if you've ever been there, the ocean is not like ours here, which is a little colder. It's super warm. Sometimes it's warmer than the air outside. And it's also really clear. So the sands that are in the oceans in tropical places are white, light brown, sometimes pink. Close to volcanoes, they can actually be black, so the water might look a little bit darker there because of the volcanic rock. But that allows us to see a lot of the lighter blue colors. So I have, you know, some various blues. I have some turquoise, some aqua, and some like sky blue. So the thing about water too, water is clear. So water as a source is reflective. And so when it's clear, it's going to reflect what's around it. So that's why it's important to think about the sand. And also, you know, when you look out at the sunset, the water can be beautiful pinks, lavenders, reds. That's just because it's a reflection of the sky. So that's something to think about. A lot of times we think that the ocean's blue. Well, it's blue because most of the time the sky is blue, but in different places in the world, you'll get different color mixtures. So I'm going to go into some colors. I'm going to start out with some deep blues to show some darker areas. And so these are going to be kind of alluding to different coral reefs. So I'm just going to go ahead and start adding this deep blue. Let's see, I have some pictures to look at here. All right. Yeah, so I'm going to have some of the blue. I'm going to do some curved lines coming in from the corners. I also like to do this because it creates, it's called a vignette, so it frames our piece. And so once you have that dark blue, you can fill it in. Oh, again, I know I've told you guys this before, but if you do have like a scrap paper or something you can put underneath your paper, it's nice because then you don't have to worry about going really slowly close to the edge, and you can just go off the side of the paper and you won't get any marks on your table. Fill it in on the other side. So this application of color, it's a little bit more loose. It's not as defined like we did with the ink. And then I'm also gonna add, let's see. Yeah, I'll also add like a few little, maybe one curved line on the side here. Now, like always, especially with background, you guys are always welcome to add your own designs. So feel free to add your own colors, your own shapes. It's totally up to you how you want to adorn the background. I'm gonna move into my turquoise color. So for this, I'm just going to do some oval shapes, different areas. I'm going to add some of these different blobs. So maybe you could even make these look like little fish. They're swimming over the fish. It could even be just like little specks of smaller fish. These are just some simple shapes that you can use to create some background. Then I'm also going to layer it right over the edges of the dark blue because we want to go from a deeper blue, kind of create a gradient, so darker to lighter. I'm just gonna keep working my way down. So, let's see. Yeah, next, I think I'm gonna go into this blue here. It's kind of like a sky blue. Yeah. And this one I'm going to use for the majority of the bottom half. So right here where the edges of the manta ray start, I'm going to slowly outline. You want to do this a little bit more slowly so you have good control over it. I'll even do another line right around it just to really allow myself to have a border, because you don't want to draw all over the areas that you've spent so much time, creating. And then I'm also going to outline the largest manta ray at the bottom. You don't really have to outline the tail here. You can just go right over it, and your marker shouldn't blur with your pen. And now you can just go to town. Just go ahead and color this whole entire area in. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you prefer using a different material, you're welcome to. I'm just using marker so that I can show you guys a variety of different materials, since we were using colored pencil last week. So, feel free to use whatever. If you want to use colored pencils, if you have been enjoying that, if you want to go into your crayons, really whatever you'd like. If you even have watercolor, you could try that too. But I'm just going to stick to markers for today. All right, and then I'm going to, just above this manta ray, I'm going to do these really loose sketches, because I'm going to go to the very top with my lightest color. So it's kind of a fuzzy edge. It's not super outlined and defined. Again, if you need to go more slowly to outline around the shape of the manta ray. So again, this area around our subject, so the manta ray, is the negative space. So usually it's the air around it, but since we're underwater, it's the water around the object. Okay. And then the last color I have, this really pretty aquamarine color. So I'm just going to use this for the remainder of my composition, so my drawing here. So again, I just start out more slowly, more controlled. You guys may have noticed too, since you've been working with me a lot, twice a week, if you hop on, you might notice that you're gaining more and more control over your tools. So, your hand is getting more muscle memory in the way that you create your lines, or the way that you hold your tools when you're coloring, so that's kind of cool to pay attention to too. So now I'm just going to go ahead and add this remaining color and really create a habitat around my manta ray. There's something about drawing the ocean. I've always loved the ocean, and so it's really cool that you guys are interested in it too. There's something about drawing underwater animals that is really relaxing to me. And you can even just imagine yourself underwater, and like when you hear your breathing, that's the cool thing about being underwater. Everything's kind of quiet and you can hear yourself breathing. And I think the manta ray really teaches us gracefulness, and just if you ever get a chance to see them, maybe you've seen them at SeaWorld. They're so graceful in the way that they move. All right. Okay, so that's it for our manta ray drawing. Last thing, like always, if you wanted to, add anything else in the background, that's totally up to you. I love to see how you guys are creative in your expression. But final thing is to sign it. So I'm gonna go back to my black pen, if you have Sharpie or your ballpoint pen, again, to remind you, artist sign in the bottom right hand corner. So if you know cursive, you can put your signature in there. You have a beautiful manta ray. The other thing is, this orientation, we did it makes a really good bookmark. So if you need a bookmark, you can even make your own artwork into your bookmarks. So thank you for joining in on our underwater excursion with these manta rays, and I look forward to seeing your work.